Fox News political insiders are here, and you can join the conversation as you already have, because I'm seeing your tweets on Twitter at Harris Faulkner, at FN Insiders, hashtag FRW. Pat Caddell on the left there, a former pollster for President Jimmy Carter and Fox News contributor. Good to see you. John LeBoutillier here in New York with me on set, former Republican congressman for New York. And then on the right, also via satellite tonight, because they roll like rock stars, Doug Schoen, former pollster for President Bill Clinton and a Fox News contributor as well. Gentlemen, good to see you.
Good to see you,
Let's jump right in. We have a couple things happening now, and Pat, I want to go to you first because I'm curious. Iran's religious leader saying, U.S. stay out of it. Why would we hear from him at this point and condemn what we're doing?
Well, this is our new erstwhile ally, I guess, that the president has suggested and Kerry that we need to negotiate with in Iraq. We just got his answer. We saw Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel this morning attacking the whole idea of our cooperating with Iran, and it'll only speed up their nuclear program. What we have in the Middle East and the entire region is a total disaster going on, and it's getting worse, not better. And it makes you ask the question, as bad as Saddam Hussein was, is this better? And the same thing as we're already seeing in Libya, where we have even more extremists taking over than Gaddafi. I don't know.
You know, it's frustrating, though, just to watch this unfold, Doug, because we didn't really see the president make a case one way or the other last week. I want you to kind of break down where we are so that maybe the American people can understand.
Harris, it's tough to do that because it's very hard to see how 300 trainers and unspecified airstrikes combined with, as Pat was saying correctly, a half-on, half-off rapprochement with the Iranians will achieve anything. I think we're really nowhere, Harris. The data from public opinion polls, which we'll get to later, shows the American people are developing increased doubts about the president, and I think equally important, our allies around the world are reaching the same conclusion.
Yeah, let's talk about the way the public is seeing how the president is handling foreign policy just in general. I have some numbers that we can pop up. Wall Street Journal NBC poll shows that President Obama is handling a foreign policy. We call this a disapproval polling because that number of disapprove is so huge at 57%, John.
Yeah, oh yeah. No, his ratings in this poll are the worst they've ever been. The biggest problem he's got is a different number, where 54% of the American people say that he can no longer lead and can't get things done. In other words, he's basically a lame duck. People are tuning him out.
But we have so much to deal with right now.
This is the second failed presidency in a row that is doing the exact same thing. A Secretary of State running around the Middle East, meddling, trying to tell a country who their leader ought to be. We just had this under the Bush administration. Now the Obama, oh, we don't like Nouri al-Maliki. We want a different guy running it. We can't run our own country, let alone run another country.
But President Obama promised he would be different.
Yeah. Well,
change.
He's been different stylistically, but in the end, the result is the same. It's mayhem all over the Middle East. The United States embroiled where the American people don't want to be anymore. And we need to wake up to it. And I think it speaks to something big, okay? The failure of both political parties here. And the American people have seen it. It's not that one is good and the other's bad. They're both terrible.
I want to take a look at something and get your response, Pat, if we can. First, it's former Vice President Dick Cheney talking about Senator Rand Paul and his view. And you kind of see two divergent views inside and outside the Beltway. Let's watch them back to back and then we'll talk.
If we spend our time debating what happened 11 or 12 years ago, we're going to miss the threat that is growing and that we do face. Rand Paul, with all due respect, is basically an isolationist. He doesn't believe we ought to be involved in that part of the world. I think it's absolutely essential.
Was the war won in 2005 when many of these people said it was won? They didn't really, I think, understand the civil war that would break out. And what's going on now, I don't blame on President Obama. Has he really got the solution? Maybe there is no solution. But I do blame the Iraq war on the chaos that is in the Middle East. I also blame those who are for the Iraq war for emboldening Iran.
Pat, who has it right?
I don't know, but I'll tell you this. This rip in the Republican Party between the neocons on the one side represented by Dick Cheney and Rand Paul, which is the libertarian, more isolationist view, is a serious one, and it reflects a division in the country. Look, there is a middle ground in foreign policy to the American people between surrender on the one hand and, as I've said before, an invasion a week on the other. And what we're not having, what they cannot grasp, is why we have such stupid policies, and they seem to repeat themselves. You know, the president this week talked about, but I find, echo what John said about leadership. Half the people think he's competent, half incompetent, worse than Bush and Katrina in the Wall Street Journal poll. And the other thing is, this week, someone reminded me that he had said, you know, that the people need to rise above their differences, get a common agenda, work for the future of their country. It was talking about Iraq. It was like he should have been talking about himself and his leadership here in America, which is, as Doug likes to point out, and I have too, so divisive in this country. It's so politically divisive.
You know, Doug, I hear a theme from you three gentlemen. We hear it sometimes here on the program, Fox Report Weekend, of the American public and a trust deficit. Does this foreign policy issue and with regard to Iraq feed into that?
Oh, absolutely, Harris. Whether you're an isolationist, a realist in the middle, or a neocon, it's hard to look at this presidency, and indeed the one that came before, and feel anything but distrust, and I dare say very frequently disdain towards our government. What John said is exactly right. We can't govern ourselves here at home. We're divided. We're not offering leadership around the world, and the net result is the American people are really upset and aghast, have thrown their hands up, and are looking for alternatives. Anything. Sadly, they don't see any.
Before we wrap up this part of our conversation tonight and move on to other things, John, you know, one of the pressing questions that I've wanted to ask, and I have members of the military, what honors the sacrifice that our men and women have made in Iraq? I mean, what is the best decision? I understand that the Obama administration had calls from the prime minister in Iraq for help, airstrike something, as far back as January. No. Maybe we've reached a tipping point, it's too late for help, but what honors those men and women we've lost?
You could say the same thing about the 58,000 people that died in Vietnam. What did they die for? But what they have to look, and their families have to look, is they served their country, their commander-in-chief, their military leaders. They, in the case of Vietnam, a lot of them joined, but a lot were drafted, so they went. Here, everybody joined. And the sadness is that their political leaders have led the military down the wrong path, irresponsibly. They use them like fodder. And then when they come back, we have the VA scandal. We have the lies throughout all that, too. No wonder the public is so cynical about all of it.
Any ray of sunshine, any silver lining? I mean, we always look for that. We want to offer
the three of us, our ray of sunshine, believe it or not, is we hope that an alternative is coming politically in America, someone to run against the status quo, against both parties, against the big corrupt media, and take it on as an outsider and try to shake things up. That's what we hope for.
Monica C. writes on Twitter to us, stop the nation building, thousands of years, and they still have warlords and a warlord mentality. Lawmakers are hoping for answers in the next round of hearings on the Internal Revenue Service's targeting of political conservatives. Tomorrow, IRS Commissioner John Koskinen will face another round. This time, Congressman Darrell Issa and the House Oversight Committee will hear from him. And here are the political insiders, Pat Caddell, John LeBoutillier, and Doug Schoen. You know what's really interesting about this? Do we still have a little bit of that sound on tape? I want you guys to hear this from the hearing. A lot of people miss this, but it really caught my ear and eye. Does Lois Lerner have a cell phone? Watch this.
Do you know if Lois Lerner had a BlackBerry or an iPhone?
I do not know.
You don't know?
I do not know.
Do employees of the Internal Revenue Service carry mobile devices that are issued to them by the government?
They carry mobile devices. The mobile devices run the same email system. People do not have on their office BlackBerries if they have them. Or whatever.
Let's wrap it there, because I think the big news there was that, you know, Lois Lerner's at the center of this whole thing. She pled the fifth. She doesn't want to talk. She was in charge, John. And those guys don't even know if she had a BlackBerry or an iPhone?
Yeah, they don't seem to know much, and they don't tell anybody anything. And for anyone to believe that these emails were coincidentally lost from her and 6 other key officials there, just at the period when the targeting And it's not conservatives. It's Tea Party people and pro-Israel groups were targeted too because they disagreed with the president's foreign policy. And this thing goes right up into the White House. There's no question in my mind that there's a political direction put in here, and they're scrambling to do the cover-up. Happily, by Friday night, the mainstream media finally gave a few minutes on the evening news for the first time to this IRS.
This is not a political, like a Democrat or Republican. This affects all Americans. I mean, this is about our freedom here. You know, it's interesting. John Jacobson says on Twitter, why can't Congressman Issa just subpoena the NSA about Lois Lerner's emails? Doug?
Well, that's a good idea. I would like to know what, if anything, is left on Lois Lerner's own BlackBerry, and I'd like to know what the company that was hired to back up the IRS emails in 2005 has in their files. But it absolutely strains credulity, as John and Pat have suggested, that somehow all these emails have disappeared. I mean, this makes Rosemary Woods' 18.5-minute gap during Watergate look like a walk in the park.
Pat, before we go to you, Jose writes on Twitter, Ms. Faulkner, oh, he's so respectful. The IRS has a contract with a private email recovery archive company that Doug was just alluding to. I spoke of it. It's called Sonasoft. Now, I'm thinking they spent, from what I'm reading, some money advertising. How excited they were to get the IRS as their client. You know, they might be a little motivated to go back and find those emails on their own just to prove their service works.
You wish somebody would. Let me just say something. If you believe the 6,000 emails and all these things crash and can't be recovered, and we're only told of the Congress this week after being known for months, look, then you probably believe that after 642 days, a man who was running around in the open in Libya, in Benghazi, who was a suspect, finally gets picked up. And it has nothing to do with the political agenda of the White House. I want to tell you, look, only a simpleton cannot grasp, or at least a partisan simpleton, that there is a cover-up going on here. And even the Republicans are incompetent at getting at the heart of it. All I can tell you is Bob Bauer, the husband of Anita Dunn, who launched the anti-Fox campaign at the White House, came in as White House counsel. He is the one in 2008 demanded that Lois Lerner go after these groups. He moves in the White House. Commissioner Schulman moves in literally like he's a permanent resident of the White House, and we have all this targeting. You all think this is a coincidence? Not at all. And the media is to blame for this because they've decided to put their partisan support for one president, one party ahead of America and ahead of the American people knowing the truth. And the Republicans are just incompetent. That's
Pat Caddell does not mince words. Well, anybody who thinks that Americans don't care about this IRS scandal just simply are not paying any attention to social media. Before we get off the subject and move on to the next one, John, I'm reading here, Deanna Ortner says that she's been reading that the IRS canceled Sonasoft, that's that archiving contract that they had a few weeks ago after Lois Lerner's computer crashed. There are a lot of ways to get these emails back, though, because they don't just sit on that.
They don't want to get them, Harris. The last thing the administration or the IRS wants is to get them. Now, and we got to just quickly.
Well, they don't want to get them, but
we
Republicans,
want them. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
so,
well, but they run the government.
What will this hearing look like this week? So you got another one tomorrow
night. It's going to be more of the same, where the Republicans finally have found their legs on this thing after screwing around for a year. Where was this a year ago? Why weren't we?
But that time didn't hurt them. If I'm looking at social media correctly, people are very.
If you look in the Wall Street Journal poll, the image of the Republican Party has never been worse. I mean, it's a disaster.
Can they regain footing? A lot of people care about this issue.
Not by this. Let me just say this, that I think this IRS thing and what we talked about the foreign policy, all are harbingers for this November. We only have 4 months to go. We have a huge election in November for the U.S. Senate. Everything looks good for the Republicans to win enough seats to take over the Senate. And that is a game changer for the last 2 years of the president.
All right, let's talk about Hillary Clinton. And we don't know if she's going to run for the White House in 2016. We do know she has a book out right now. Doug Schoen, you know the Clintons. There's this new book that's coming out, though, that may be some competition for the book sales. I don't know. It's called Blood Feud. It's written by journalist Edward Klein. And I'm looking down at my Barry right now because I want to say what it says. It gets inside the dysfunctional, jealous relationship between Bill and Hillary Clinton and Barack and Michelle Obama, according according to him, and how it could explode in 2016. And there are a lot of details in here. They're almost uncomfortable to read about their relationship. Could any of this be true? You know them.
Well, look, I obviously have worked with both Clintons. I've observed them. My sense is what Ed Klein is reporting is mostly true. Go back to the South Carolina primary in 2008 when Obama said that Bill Clinton had played the race card. That was a setup, and Bill Clinton, who has been passionate in support of civil rights and the African American community and minorities, took, as he should have, great exception. Nothing that has happened subsequent has repaired that breach. Hillary did serve as Secretary of State. They both, the Clintons and the Obamas, have their own selfish reasons to stay in close touch and to work together. But Harris, bluntly, I don't believe that there is any great degree of trust between the two families.
The book says, reportedly, outwardly they put on a show of unity, but privately the Obamas and Clintons, the two power couples of the Democrat Party, loathe each other. Pat?
Yeah, well, I think that that's probably true. And Doug's a much
better.
Does
it matter?
Knowledge.
If she moves forward?
Well, it is somewhat of a problem. Look, Hillary's ratings, her book is out of the top 10 apparently for Amazon. Her numbers are going down. There was a Wall Street Journal poll today which showed both she and Jeb Bush, well, half the country thinks each of them is more a candidate of the past than offering new ideas and vision. And I think here's the problem. But yet among Democrats, she's getting stronger. She falls less as a less potent general election candidate. The reason being because she's trapped between being Obama inside the Democratic Party. She can't criticize him, and yet the longer she's there, the more it costs her in a general election mode. I think the answer is the country may have enough of all of this, and as John suggested, looking for something different.
Are they Hillary saturated already? You got 10 seconds. What do you have to say?
I think the more you see Hillary, the more the less they like her, and I think the less they trust her. In the Wall Street Journal poll, only 37% of the American people think she's honest and straightforward.
Gentlemen, thank you for being here, and thanks to everybody on social media. Twitter is a Twitter. You can continue to follow us at Harris Faulkner, at FN Insiders. We'll be tweeting on through the night. And I'll see you for the next news break in about an hour or so. I'll be back tomorrow at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. on the Pacific Coast for Outnumbered.